With Godzilla, king of the monsters, getting ever and ever closer, let's dive deeper into this Monsterverse with Kong, Skull Island, finding an enemy. Welcome to Durbania, I'm Durbin, and this is my theological analysis for Kong, Skull Island, finding an enemy. I really do like this movie, and I like it better than Godzilla 2014 because I feel like they listened to the audience and went, all right, let's put more of the monster in the monster movie in this Monsterverse. And so we got a really good mix of Kong and some really solid characters in this movie, plus a strong message about finding an enemy, probably where there isn't even one.
Sometimes an enemy doesn't exist till you're looking for one.
Jesus had some pretty simple things in his life, and it takes a good theologian to make them complicated. One of those things Jesus said was, seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. So then the question becomes, what are we really seeking in our lives? So when you dive into Kong, Skull Island, there's a great picture of this from two different military characters. Hank, played by John C. Reilly.
We're all gonna die together out here. You shouldn't have come here.
And Lieutenant Colonel Preston Picard, played by Samuel L. Jackson. These two characters are very similar military background, but they are seeking two very different things, and so they find two very different things. The movie opens with Hank, and he's in a dogfight with a Japanese soldier in World War II. So the war and those uniforms make these two men enemies. They're fighting each other in the sky, they shoot each other out of the sky, they crash land on Skull Island, and now they gotta figure out how to survive. Because after they initially try to kill each other, and they run into something way bigger than themselves, well, removed from the war, and removed from the uniform, Hank finds something.
You take away the uniforms from the war, and he became my brother.
Here he was stranded with an actual enemy, and he found a brother. Because war wasn't something that he kept in his heart. That vengeance, that bitterness, all that, he didn't keep that in his heart. He knew what he was fighting for. He knew what he was seeking, and he found a brother. And now you have Lieutenant Colonel Packard. Now this guy's interesting because you could tell right from the beginning, he's just seeking war. He is looking for an enemy. We first meet him and he's opening up a box that has his medals and he goes,
All this for what?
now he should be rejoicing that he's going home and that his men are going home. But instead, I mean, it is like he got a terminal diagnosis. He just had no life, no identity outside of having an enemy and outside of being a fighter. That bitterness and that war got deep into his heart. So an enemy and a war is what he's seeking. And when he arrives on Skull Island, now that is what he finds. Now at first, yeah, it sucks that Kong is killing his men. But my gosh, they were dropping bombs.
Well, you don't go into someone's house and start dropping bombs unless you're picking a fight.
Because something new came on the island and was upsetting the balance and waking up the skull creatures under the ground. Yeah, he's going to defend his territory. And so he does. But I understand at first why Packard is mad. And I would think everybody at first is mad. But as their time on the island unfolds and they realize there is a natural balance, like Kong is God on the island, and these devils that live under the island are way worse. Kong living on this island keeps that balance and keeps those things underground from coming out and destroying the tribe that lives there and everything else that lives there. So Kong represents life, he represents balance, and he's trying to keep the balance.
If you take away a species' natural competition, they'll proliferate out of control.
Then we'll end them too.
And it reaches this point where he's so unreasonable. Here he is under the excuse of, I gotta find Chapman. We gotta find him. We will not leave any man behind. And he's using that as an excuse to press forward into territory he shouldn't go. And once they get across into the territory they shouldn't be, they find out Chapman's dead. And he's like, that doesn't change anything. I mean, he is so bitter and he's so looking for a war to fight, and this time a war to win, that he is going to risk the lives of everybody so that he can find that purpose in his life, so that he could show to Kong, man is king. And you know he's not trying to show Kong that man is king. He's trying to show Kong. He's trying to show Vietnam. He's trying to show himself. He's trying to show the world He is king. He has no life outside of having an enemy. He has no life outside of having a war to fight. And everybody else is learning on this island, if we let the water still, then there's peace. And Kong is keeping the balance. But he is all about churning up those waters. Even after learning that's a bad idea, that's all he's gonna do. And you know what he found? Here he was stranded with a force for good, a force for balance, and he found an enemy. He found a death being squashed like a bug by Kong. So he was looking for an enemy, and guess what he found? An enemy. He was looking for a war. You know what he found? A war. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. So what we let in our heart is what's going to flow out of our heart. If we let war, if we let hatred, if we let prejudice, if we let bitterness, if we let vengeance and all that stuff come into our heart, that's the stuff that's going to pour out of our lives. That's what was pouring out of Lieutenant Colonel Packard's life. He couldn't find meaning outside of a war, and he filled his heart with that fear. He filled his heart with that fight and that bitterness. He was seeking an enemy, and he found an enemy. But you have Hank who had a wife and a kid that he just couldn't get back to. He had all these reasons to be bitter, but you could tell what was in his heart. Because while he was on that island with another soldier who was an enemy, he actually found a brother. So guard your heart, because out of it flow the issues of life. You find what you're really seeking. So what did you think of Kong Skull Island? Did you like this movie, and are you excited for Godzilla, King of the Monsters? I'm excited for it. Let's talk about that in the comments. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button to become a Durbanian. Hit the bell by the subscribe button so you're notified for my next movie review, ranking video, theological analysis, or anything else I do here. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.